Morning all, welcome to this meeting of the Midlothian Safer Communities Board. Could I have note of any apologies?
I've had none intimated.
And the order of business?
As published.
Have any declaration of interest from elected members? Item 4 is the minute of the meeting of the 1st of April for approval. Everyone content to agree that as a correct minute? Yeah. Thank you. Which takes us on to item 5, which is a report on the membership of the Safer Communities Board. Kevin, say anything to this? Yep.
Thank you, Chair. This report is an updated membership proposal for the Safer Communities Board. From the meeting on the 12th of February 2013, the then Shadow Board agreed to endorse the proposals to establish a Safer Communities Board, and the approved terms of reference are attached to Appendix 1 to these papers. The voting members of the Board remain unaltered as listed, and the following changes are proposed to the non-voting members, which is for representative from the Armed Forces, an alternate nominee as Colonel Bates is retiring; from NHS Lothian, an alternate nominee as David Small's role has changed within NHS Lothian; and additional partner representatives to fill the place for business and education sector, proposed to be either or both Violence Against Women Coordinator or from Victim Support, who currently sit on the delivery group at an operational level, and clearly different representatives for the strategic level of the board itself. Margaret Brewer, who attends, is confirmed as the mandatory representative of both criminal justice and public protection services to reflect her changing role in terms of the recent management review at Midlothian Council, and the updated membership list is attached as Appendix 2 as proposed, and is recommended that the Board approve the updated membership list as detailed at Appendix 2, which indicates those vacancies that we've referenced. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. I think just maybe as a comment as an aside, that not in way of addition to it, but simply that obviously we always welcome members from the National Police and Fire Boards to attend these meetings. We have David from the National Police Board with us this morning, so I don't think we need to update the membership as such, but I think we already have agreement with the Council that that is a standing fact, that we're more than welcome any of the members from the national boards who attend these meetings, and will always be very welcoming of input from them. We're happy to note that report.
Could I just say, Convener, that once again we're disappointed, and I'd like it to be noted that the Labour group have again failed to have their 2 members show up to this board.
Yes. We are talking about ASBO's antisocial behaviour. I think the Labour Party is suffering from that by refusing to produce these 2 people, and I find it very disturbing that they then insist that the police must come and talk to them separately, and I feel we ought to undertake an action where those groups who refuse to participate in the meetings of the Safer Community Council, that they have no right to then waste police time or fire brigade time, for fire and rescue time, in order to update them separately.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would agree with the sentiment expressed. Is it possible to ask the Labour group under what conditions they would be prepared to join this panel? Because it's if you like, a democratic deficit if we have people who are not represented on what's quite an important committee as regards the safety and well-being of the people of Midlothian.
I'm more than happy to ask the question, and although I have, I think, in previous attempts been told under no circumstances are the group going to participate. It is unfortunate, but equally as elected members, all elected members are entitled to request meetings and updates on any given piece of information, so we are slightly constrained from that point of view. All we can do is continue to ask. I think it is appropriate that we try to have as wide a range of the elected members of the council represented on this board, and that's why we've retained the 2 spaces for the Labour group. But ultimately we can't force anyone to attend this board who doesn't want to attend it, and that unfortunately is the position we're in. Certainly we'll make approaches and try to see if we can make another request for participation, but we can't force anyone to do that.
But if they want to be updated, they just jolly well come here. They get a fantastic updating, they get wonderful papers, and a lot of effort has gone into producing these papers, and to do it all yet again is, in my opinion, completely morally wrong.
No, it would be ideal if we had participation, absolutely, but certainly the papers are available to them, and as I say, it's, as elected members, they're entitled to receive information and have meetings with any number of people that they might see fit to do so. I agree it's unfortunate, but it is one that we'll just have to keep trying, and hopefully eventually we can have a point where these positions are filled. So I think that would be the ideal for everyone.
Hi, sorry, can I just flag up that I made an error when I compiled Appendix 2. Peter Heath, under the Fire Service, that name should obviously be replaced by John Dickey, who's currently covering that post, so I'll just be amending that after the meeting.
With that, we're happy to note the report. Thank you. It takes us then to item 6, which is the Midlothian Local Police Plan.
Morning, Chair. Thank you. If I could just take this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Angus McInnes, and I'm one of the superintendents in J Division. Just last week, J Division went through I would say, an enhancement of the management structure, in that there are now 3 superintendents and the Chief Superintendent. Appreciate it's normally the Chief Superintendent, Jill Emery, who attends here. As of last Monday, I took up a new role, that of Partnership Superintendent. So there will be both the Chief Super and the Chief Superintendent, to not delve too much into police jargon. The Chief Superintendent and myself will be participating in scrutiny boards and the community planning process, and that's to enhance police government's engagement with the community. So, being that this is my first meeting here with your board, I would ask you to go gentle on me. Maybe that's a wrong thing to say. So our plan just now is I'll go through the cover report which your Chief Inspector Jim Royan has prepared. He is on leave this week, which is why he's not here. Then Michelle will take you through the document that's in relation to your that's in relation to your community policing team, and then I'll be able to take you through some of the performance update. So if we just turn to the report by Jim Royan, it gives a brief overview of policing in Midlothian, some of the challenges that have been met, and the fact that I know. I should have sat near the door so I could get out in a hurry. No. It speaks about some of the challenges that police in Midlothian have been dealing with while we fit into the wider Lothians and Scottish Borders Division. On the top of the second page, you'll see a reference there to the local policing plan, which was developed late last year, earlier this year. What I would also add is that approximately a year ago we went through a consultation process that was used to develop the multi-member ward policing plans. That process began last week, so over the next 8 to 9 weeks there will be, throughout the whole division, in excess of 3,400 surveys going out to people in the community in each of the multi-member wards to see what they feel our priorities should be, and also for them to make some comment on how they think we have performed in the past year. Point 6, there are a couple points under 5 there about UV marker gels, so on and so forth, but I will touch on that when we go through the performance update. Point 6 is on the operational policing model. In March this year there was a change in the way police services were delivered in the Midlothian Scottish borders, and as part of that process there is a public consultation which will be led by your Chief Inspector to see how you feel that model in particular has impacted on policing, and then we'll be looking to see what we can do to continue that transition to make sure that the service we deliver continues to improve. So Jim will, over the next few weeks, be in touch with you, and we'll pull together a workshop to allow people to share their views. In terms of forthcoming initiatives over the next few weeks, there's a piece there about off-road vehicles, and I've seen Jim out on the quad bike that we have been provided with, so that's a very useful piece of equipment to have, and I know it was put to good use during the Queen's Baton Relay. The second point is in relation to common assault, and we're all aware of the impact violence has in our community, particularly where it's fueled by alcohol. Over the next number of weeks and months, we will have the benefit of what's called the Force Flexible Policing Unit. So they will be deployed in Midlothian to address some of the issues, particularly around common assault. What happens is each division in the East area of Police Scotland give up some resources that go into a flexible policing unit, which is then deployed based on analysis and also bids from local area commands to address issues in their area. So Midlothian, we will benefit from their services and extra resources in coming weeks to help take forward the good work that Jim and the team have done in dealing with violence in Midlothian. You'll also know under point 8 about media development. I know that Jim is very good at being involved with the media, and he in fact pulled together the division's communication plan, and that will be taken forward over the next few weeks, not only in Midlothian, but the good work that he did will be replicated throughout the other area commands within this division. So that's something that I think Jim and the team here should be proud of, and we look forward to seeing the benefits from that. So if there are no questions in relation to this section here.
George? Just one more question under 6, that middle paragraph that refers to a workshop. Just plans in that direction.
Yes, apologies if I covered that too quickly. I made a reference to the fact that as part of the consultation on operational policing model, Jim Ryan, the Chief Inspector, will be pulling together a workshop in the next few weeks. A time or date hasn't been set yet, but he will be in touch with you, and invites will be extended.
I think I might say there's an update on that at the Community Planning Board on Thursday this week. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah, that was discussed at the last Community Planning Board as well, and certainly they agreed for a workshop to go forward. But what we decided was we wouldn't organise the workshop until we'd had this meeting, because we've got the paper about Police Scotland changes on this agenda. So the idea is that we'll take that paper and that will form a basis for the workshop, and the workshop will include members of this board, and also the whole of the Community Planning Partnership will be invited to participate in it. So I'll be liaising with Jim following this meeting to arrange that.
I was also going to ask it just at this point, perhaps. I mean, I could probably do it under the Police Scotland Year 1 report, but I think I'll just do it just now. There's been a lot of coverage in the media around firearms and officers being armed, and I think with the advantage of having David here, I don't know if you could maybe lend us some of the thoughts from the National Police Authority on that, because obviously I'm not aware of it being a particularly large issue in Midlothian. It's certainly not something that I've had raised directly with me, but I think it would be useful if we as a board had an understanding of the position of the authority, and maybe from the local officers as well, and then any comments any other colleagues have as well would be probably quite useful. David, do you mind?
I'm happy to do that, Chair. Thank you very much. Yes, members of the committee will have picked up from media considerations. There has been a discussion and a debate around the standing authority given to a number of police officers for the carrying of sidearms. This is a position that reflects, I understand it, arrangements in 3 legacy forces, and the Chief Constable took a decision to move on these legacy arrangements into the new single police force for Scotland. Now, this came to the board at its meeting on the 25th of April in Selkirk, when we had a long, detailed discussion with the Chief Constable about the background to the standing authority and the policy that he's using to oversee and implement that policy. I think Angus will be able to give you more detail, but as I understand it, the standing authority currently extends to 275 police officers, which is plainly a small proportion, I think less than 2% of the total complement of 17,234 police officers in Scotland. Now, reflecting since that debate that we had in discussion with the Chief Constable on the 25th of April, the Police Authority has been keeping this under review. But plainly, there has been a wider debate and discussion within Scotland, and you may also have seen in the last couple of weeks that the Scottish Police Authority and HMICS will be undertaking two complementary scrutiny reviews in the weeks ahead. Now, as you can imagine, the legislative guidance and policy that exists behind that decision is very extensive, and indeed goes back into the European Convention on Human Rights. And in terms of the scrutiny that will be undertaken between HMICS and the SPA, the remit that has been agreed by HMICS will focus much more on the legislative and operational context within which that decision has been taken, and the SPA scrutiny will focus much more on the communication, consultation and process aspects of that decision, and in that sense the two reviews are absolutely complementary. The SPA review will involve taking evidence both in written form and probably in oral form, and local scrutiny committees such as this will be given the opportunity to contribute to that review. Now, it is the intention of the subgroup of SPA board members, of which I am one, is the intention of that group to present or to conclude and at least present an interim report to the board meeting in October. Now, if it's possible to produce a final report by that date, then that's what will happen. But at the very least will be an interim statement by the board in October, with a final decision at its board meeting in November, I think, beyond that. We'll be taking written evidence, we'll be taking oral evidence. In addition to that, as part of the broader scrutiny relationship between the work that the SPA does and this local board, there will be a meeting to which all 32 chairs of local scrutiny committees will be invited to in the offices of COSLA on the 9th of October. And it is likely that the scrutiny work that we're undertaking around the standing authority will feature in detail at that discussion. More generally, if I can go on from that, the SPA board is very happy and very keen to dovetail the scrutiny work that we do in a broader programme with the work that you're doing here locally. We've already opened up the content of our scrutiny programme to wider public consultation, and we'll continue to do that. And if there is any joint work or any issues that you would like to refer to the board for scrutiny, then we're more than happy to take that forward. But I'm happy to answer any questions that I can on the SPA perspective, but obviously that there's an operational dimension to this as well.
Thanks, David. I'm just wondering, as the sort of local officers, have you noticed any major difference in the number of firearms officers that we have in Midlothian compared to under the old arrangements in Lothian and Borders?
Chair, thank you. I transferred to this area in March of this year from the north of Scotland, where we had the legacy Northern Constabulary had the standing authority prior to Police Scotland, so it probably would be wrong for me to comment on whether I have seen an increase in the number of firearms officers on the street or on the streets in the Lothian and Scottish borders or the legacy LNB area. But what I could comment on is, before I hand over to Michelle, one, it is a very small number of police officers. It's 275 out of over 17,000 plus. And as somebody who is a firearms commander, it is reassuring to know that you have, when necessary, as quickly as possible access to the required resources. But equally, it's not something that you use very often. I know that in this division, they have already been used, and when I say this division, I don't just mean Midlothian, I'm speaking about the whole Lothians and Scottish borders. They were used once already this week, and it brought a situation to a very safe and peaceful resolution. So they are a valuable asset to have, and as police officers, we are aware of the impact the deployment of this asset, this resource, these officers have in the community. So it's done with a lot of forethought and with due consideration. But I don't know, Michelle, if you want to add on anything?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I think you're right to ask the question of what is a national question that's live at the moment. But I've not had any complaints or even observations from the local community to bring anything like that to my attention. And certainly from my own perspective, I haven't seen any increase in numbers that are in our area. That's not the case.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the small number of policemen who are actually armed and out in the streets. It's is it recorded when they draw these arms? That would be one of my concerns if we have incidences where they're actually opening their holsters and they're drawing the weapons rather than the amount of police that are carrying them.
Yes, every occasion that a firearm is drawn is recorded, and there is a significant amount of scrutiny afterwards, not only into the actions of the police officers who were deployed on the ground, but particularly, this is as a firearms commander, into our decision-making process as to why we felt it was necessary at that time to deploy that resource. It's probably one of the, having done public order command and firearms command, the firearms command, there's a very high level of
I think certainly some of the headlines have been fairly sensationalist, I think, and it's encouraging to hear exactly what the situation is directly. I think it's been useful to have that level of information for us, certainly given me a number of reassurances. But yeah, when you do look at the numbers, it's a tiny proportion of the overall force, and gives a bit more perspective to what might have been read in some of the press. So maybe unfortunate our local press aren't here to record and report that themselves, but that's the situation we have. Are there any other questions on that, or the update report before we move on? In that case, we're happy to move on to item 7, which is the Community Policing Team Activity Summary.
How's this one going to work? I'll try that, Chair. Thank you. I understand that you all have the paperwork for the Midlothian Community Action Team's performance from April to July this year, and I just want to comment on a few points of it because I know you've all had an opportunity to read through it, I hope. I'd just like to highlight that this continuing significant impact that these officers have on violent crime and drug supply offences is our bread and butter really for Midlothian. But also it was interesting of note still the amount of alcohol which is being recovered from young people and adults in the streets of Midlothian. I thought that was an observation. And also the partnership working that they continue to drive for Midlothian in the last 3 months some of the examples of which are working with VOSA and road policing officers for a doorstep crime initiative, rural crime initiatives that they carried out in May, and throughout June, the significant community events of the marches, the gala days, the orange walks, also involved in crime prevention roadshows in partnership with the delivery group, the Queen's Baton Relay, and a march that was just a pop-up march to support the Bonnyrigg Community Hub. They also deal with the antisocial behaviour in our communities, and as the Superintendent will report on, that's a continuing decreasing picture. But one of the areas that have come to our attention has been the off-road bikes causing a nuisance and danger. It's a frequent complaint to police, and both teams have invested a significant amount of time, intelligence gathering, doing a letter drop to residents to ascertain when the peak times are, to ascertain who the people are, which have resulted in apprehensions, offenders, bikes being seized, and we've received a great deal of feedback from that from the community, and it's also been reported well locally in the media. But the team's commitment to road safety is also shown not only through their enforcement activity, which is the speeding and that type of stuff, but also linking in with our local schools and making sure that the education aspect is tied in terms of road safety along with the enforcement, and that's been carried out throughout August and in the run-up to the schools starting this week. I'm happy to take any other questions or any other points or observations that others may have, Chair. Thanks.
On the alcohol, I suppose, have you got any comparison to how that compares to, say, last year? I mean, the sort of the year on the year for that, given that this basically covers most of the summer period.
I set myself up for that, didn't I? Yes, and there has been a little bit more. I mean, I think, you know, we talk about the over-provision and the issue in Midlothian with alcohol, and I just think that is slightly over, but as an observation, it doesn't tie in with an increase in antisocial behaviour. So I just thought that tied in that, you know, we're still recovering alcohol, but we're not going to increase in antisocial behaviour as a result, but still an interesting observation.
Yeah, still slightly depressing, convener, that the Orange Order finds it necessary to go banging their drums about the streets for a battle that took place in a different country, in a different century to this one. And I'm just wondering if we could, we just had them to agreeing not to march past the Catholic Church this time until an intervention from one of the Labour members that stopped that from happening. Next year can we make sure that the Orange Order are told they will not march past the Catholic Church, because their route seems to take them in a direction they're deliberately planned to do this, to get to their point of going to the park, and then to return for a second march just to say they haven't finished their circuit yet. It's a piece of nonsense, you know. And can we find out, was there any bother at the march at all? No stopping at the Catholic Church or the march past. Anyway, it's still just so depressing that they still think it necessary to do these marches in a different country.
I think it is a challenging one for the police to manage, because while every effort I think is made to ensure routes are appropriate, there's a legal right to march that has to be accommodated, and I think that was a very sort of lengthily explained to us when we had the meeting of general purposes. Is that a fair assessment of what you have to deal with? It's every attempt's made, but there's only a limited number of actions that can be taken. Ian?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask a question about CCTV. It was an incident a few months ago at the Bonnyrigg Leisure Centre where it was broken into. I actually reported it along with somebody else, and luckily CCTV cameras in the park were operational, and I think they were useful in trying to trace the suspects. But this is a more general question, and this is something which you may not be able to answer, it might be more on the council side. We see a lot of CCTV cameras around, and in some places, I think in a lot of places it's a case they're not monitored 24 hours a day, which is fine. It's just a case really that if there is an incident, we can go back and look at them. Are all the cameras that we see in the streets operational? Are they all, do they all have recorded film available for interrogation, or are there some gaps that we need to know about?
No, happy to answer that, and I can't speak on behalf of obviously private CCTV that's ongoing, but the CCTV that's in place for Midlothian is the council, and it's council managed. But what I can make is an observation regarding the CCTV the cameras that they have, which is that some of the cameras are fixed, so we're only capturing a certain area. Some of them are moving, so sometimes it's moving and it's always going to be in the opposite direction. So, but very much they are recordable, and we are able to harvest information from them depending on different areas across Midlothian. As I say, they are managed and upkept and monitored by Midlothian Council.
Come back on that. That's very useful to know. So if an incident took place, would it then be the police who would take control of acquiring the film and looking to see if there's any evidence? So that be then effectively taken out of the council's hands, and it would be under your control?
Yes, just as part of any active investigation, we'd look to ascertain where the evidence lay, and if the evidence lay in CCTV coverage, as it would do with private coverage, we would look to seize that as part of the evidence for that inquiry.
Sorry, just to supplement that, Chair, in terms of the council operations, which Councillor Baxter referenced, my colleague Ricky Muffet has been carrying out inventory in terms of the operational cameras in the system, and indeed in terms of the requirements for investment in that, and it may be something we can pick up with Councillor Baxter offline and share the report, which I haven't seen for some weeks, but I know he was working on.
Are we satisfied to note the content of the community team's report? That then takes us to item number 8, which is the Midlothian Police Performance Report. To June.
Chair, thank you. I trust everyone's had an opportunity to look through the report, and we're looking now to give some context around the various figures that are there and how they relate to the priorities and objectives in the Midlothian policing plan. So, starting off with number 1, is to reduce the level of alcohol-related violent crime within Midlothian. That is, as we would say, on target. The percentage of serious violent crimes aggravated by alcohol has decreased in Midlothian from about 60% of those type of crimes last year to about 27.8% so far this year, which is an overall reduction of around just over 32%. However, we will not be complacent. We continue to ask the community for their support, because these are small numbers. Thankfully, it's a relatively safe area to live, and while we will continue with different dispersal plans and taking what we could call robust action, things like deploying the flexible policing unit, we are aware that we are part of a community, and we have to work collectively to make sure that this, what is a very positive trend, continues. That involves, as individuals, how we conduct ourselves when we're out and about, how we, as people in positions of influence around licensed premises and so on and so forth, how we work with them to make sure that people can have fun and responsibly, because I don't believe that the police, we're not killjoys. We want people to enjoy themselves and have a good time, but we all recognise it needs to be done in a way that is for the good of the community, as opposed to where somebody is seriously assaulted. So, so far this year, it's a good trend, but we are aware that there's more ground to be made, and that's one reason why the flexible policing unit will be deployed here over the next few weeks. What I propose to do is just speak through the points under each priority and then take any questions. So moving on to number 2, which is to increase the proportion of positive stop searches for drugs. You can see there that there has been as of the time this report was prepared, a slight decrease in the number. That is the best part of over a month ago, and since then, and this is the information that was available on Monday, there have been 519 stop searches for drugs in Midlothian so far this year. Approximately about 17% of them have been positive. So that's still a fair number of people who are carrying various or consuming various substances that then are unfortunately very often linked to different forms of criminality. Something else that we are seeing more often, you may have picked up on bits and pieces in the media, is around what is loosely termed as legal highs. And that is something that we as an organisation, but I believe not only in the southeastern part of Scotland, but having worked up north and having been the area commander up in Shetland, very far north, it's an issue as well, is substance misuse and in particular legal highs. So we will, as an organisation, continue to carry out appropriate stop searches to detect the supply of illegal substances, but as a community it's something that we as a whole have to look at. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on the first priority and the results that are there.
I'm actually just wondering if that might be something that would be useful for the board to have a bit more information on at a future meeting, because obviously there's a very general sort of seizure of drugs, and it's always very general terms, but actually maybe at a future meeting we could actually have a bit more detail about where are the issues, what are the main points that we need to be sort of aware of within the communities, because obviously the impact of drugs in the communities knocks on to so many other factors and antisocial behaviour and into some, we're down to 14, 15 and housebreaking even. So actually, personally I think it would be quite useful for us as a board to have a bit more of a detailed look into what are the main issues around drugs misuse in Midlothian. Is that something that would be welcomed by other members? Is that? Yeah.
So I was just going to flag up that drug and alcohol misuse is the partnership's highest priority for this year, and as such we have a dedicated subgroup which looks at that. They're meeting this Thursday, and we've got new psychoactive substances as top on the agenda for that meeting, but along with other alcohol and drug misuse issues. So certainly it would be no problem for us to work with the police to pull together a report for the next board.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly, Chair, that's something we'll take forward, particularly working with the Alcohol and Drug Partnership. So moving on to the second priority, which is protecting people, and the three measures there. First, to increase the number of adult at-risk referrals made to partner agencies. Again, this year we are on target. There were 236 referrals in 2013-14. However, due to recording mechanisms last year, we cannot say how many of them were shared with partner agencies. So far this year there's been 276, so that's an increase of about 17%. There are a number of factors behind this increase. As police officers become more aware of the environment they're working in and of the different requirements, I can think back to a few years ago when you would put in a child referral form, but you maybe didn't put in an adult referral form, whereas now it's something that we recognise that throughout society, from the very young to those that are further on in life, there's people that are vulnerable and need help, need assistance, need support. So it's something that I would expect to see as the months go on and the years go on. There will continue to be an increase. We've brought in under Police Scotland, a new recording system, VPD, which is a vulnerable persons database. So this will, over the next few months, become don't want to sound like I'm using just management words, but a joined up system, so that there is a national database that allows for the sharing of information about people who are vulnerable or need support. And you can think of, as police officers going into an address and maybe it's a bit dishevelled or untidy, and the person maybe drinks too much or drinks a lot and smokes, and you might think, what's it got to do with the police? I'm looking across the chamber and seeing partners from fire and rescue. It's something that's worth sharing with them. just so they can go in and give some advice and make sure that the occupant, the householder, has an understanding of fire safety and is kept safe and well. So that's I would like to see, and I'm sure that number will continue. That's the number of referrals. Point 4 is about ensuring that 95% of domestic abuse initial bail checks are conducted within a prescribed time frame. So that's within 24 hours. And so far, this year in Midlothian, it's about 98%. And that's a very vital target to achieve, to make sure that if there's a domestic incident, somebody is at court, appears from custody and is bailed, that then the person who's been subject to that abusive behaviour is aware of the bail conditions, so that it's what we call a safety plan, to make sure that they're kept safe, that they're aware that the person that abused them is back out in society, and what measures are in place or what steps they should take to keep themselves as safe as possible. So far in the past quarter in Midlothian, only one bail check was failed, and that's because the victim, the person who'd been subjected to the abusive behaviour, didn't reside. They'd moved on from the bail address. But we have ways of making sure that they are made aware of the fact that that there is bail and they're kept safe. And then number 5 is that the domestic abuse crimes and offences. You set the target of looking to achieve a detection rate of 75%. When the report was written, it was at 77, and it's now at 78.3%. So that is still slightly down from where we were this time last year, but I made reference a few minutes ago to the VPD and the recording mechanism, and as with any new system, sometimes takes us as police officers a wee bit longer to learn how to use new systems. So from my position as a superintendent, I'm aware that there are a number of other detected domestic abuse crimes and offences in the division, and when they are more accurately recorded, I'm quite sure that that figure will give a better reflection and be much closer to where it was last year, and certainly should remain above target. So here it's just about what we're doing to protect people, and it's one area that in certainly this local authority we are doing what we should and being where we should be.
On domestic abuse, can I just, I see obviously the number of bail checks, percentage is up, but there's almost 30 less that have had to be carried out from my reading of that. Is that a reflection of a reduction in domestic abuse or a reduction in the convictions for domestic abuse?
It's not a reduction in the convictions for domestic abuse. What I will do is, give me a minute here, I will look back and I can give you across the division a better picture of where we are in terms of domestic abuse. So this is, unfortunately, it's not broken down for each individual local authority, but as of Monday across the division there was about 5% fewer domestic abuse incidents than there were a year ago, but there was about 2.3% more crimes. So I don't want to sound like a mathematician getting in about figures, but what that shows there is that overall there are slightly fewer incidents of domestic abuse, but in terms of the number of crimes there's slightly more. So then you might ask, well, why is it that there's then a reduction in the number of bail offences? Because the bail would be granted if the person went straight to court from custody or for an undertaking, but there are some domestic abuse incidents that are reported by way of a crime report for summons. So the bail might not be set until the person actually appears at court, so there can be a wee bit of a lag before that happens. Generally, the bail conditions are when somebody has appeared from custody. And so I'm arrested today, go to court tomorrow, and bailed tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, and that's when the 24 hours for the bail check would start.
Can I just clarify as well, a detection rate is not a conviction rate? convictions at court. So that's once a trial has happened and someone has pled guilty. The detection rate is us detecting a crime, so reporting someone for that crime, whether or not they're subsequently convicted.
It was just to say, I don't know if people are aware, but Midlothian will be covered by the Domestic Abuse Court as from February 2015, which is likely to possibly increase the level of prosecution, because there will be an advocacy service built into the Domestic Abuse Court service, which will encourage victims to appear personally in court, where we know that there's more likely to be a prosecution if the victim actually appears. There's also likely to be an increase in victims being fully informed and sort of supported through the process, both before and after court. So it will probably increase numbers really for all of us in terms of looking at domestic abuse, which would be a good thing, not a bad thing. But it's really just to make people aware that that's the case. The advocacy part of it hasn't really been sorted out yet. What happens currently in Edinburgh is that Women's Aid provide the service, but it's a sort of service level agreement. We don't currently have a service level agreement, although people are possibly aware that through the SMILE service there's a second advocate now being appointed within Midlothian. We now have 2 domestic abuse advocates rather than 1, but whether there's capacity within that to sort of service the domestic abuse court is something I think we need to work out kind of fairly urgently over the next few months.
Chair, just on that point there that you raised in relation to the domestic abuse, if you would like, we can arrange for a more detailed breakdown of the number of domestic abuse incidents in this area. We'll get that to you. Okay. Moving on to priority 3, which is reducing violence. Number 6 is decrease the number of Group 1 violent crimes per 10,000 head of population. When you look at the figures here, we are static from where we were this time last year. So obviously it's something we'll continue to work on, because the target is not to remain the same, the target is to decrease. So that's something that hopefully through the deployment of the flexible policing unit, we would look to, as the year progresses, see a change there. Number 7 is to increase.
Sorry, can I ask what a Group 1 crime is?
A Group 1 crime is a crime against a person involving violence. So what you're looking at there is serious assault, murder, attempted murder, homicide. It's more serious use of violence that also includes some offences in relation to children and young people. Your Friday night or Saturday night dust up outside a nightclub or a pub, that's what's called a common assault and falls under a different category. So what we're talking about here are the higher tariff acts of violence.
Sorry, I can come back. It's very difficult to see how you'd prevent that kind of thing happening. It's the sort of thing that flares up unless you're stopping and searching everyone to make sure they don't have knives. I find that a bit difficult. I can see that you've got targets here, but I really have a lot of sympathy for you on this one, because I cannot see what you would do really to reduce that.
Yeah, it is a challenging target. However, as a whole across the, and apologise if I keep referring to the whole division, but across the whole Lothians and Scottish borders, we have seen a reduction in the number of serious assaults from where we were this time last year. So in some areas it has gone down. In Midlothian it's currently staying the same. So how do you achieve that? Well, a lot of that behaviour is driven by substance misuse. So people are drinking or taking drugs. So if we, as an organisation and collectively, can do something around, particularly on a Friday and Saturday night, people are in the pub or the licensed premise, they start drinking. The next thing there's a fight, and then, as when you're a kid or a child, your mum will say, "Oh, you took it too far." There's always somebody that takes it too far, and that little pushing and shoving match, that common assault, becomes a serious assault, and they beat somebody up. And there are some cases where they then go on to use weapons. So what we'd be looking to do is to work with licensed premises and just to educate people, as I was saying earlier, about being able to go out and have a good time without going and fighting, and then without taking that fight onto a serious assault. So it has worked in other areas, and we will make sure that that's something that we're working to do here in the coming months.
So I was just going to flag up as well under violent crimes that the antisocial behaviour and violent offender group do a lot of work around management of violent offenders within Midlothian to ensure that any repeat offenders, obviously to minimise the effect of that happening again. So there's a lot of work done under that. At the last Cabinet meeting, I believe it was, there was a request for us to come to the board with a report on providing a breakdown of domestic abuse and violent offences within Midlothian. So we're working on that for the next Safer Communities Board, so there will be more detail provided as part of that.
Thank you. Point 7 was about increasing the percentage of positive stop and searches for offensive weapons. At the time the report was written, it was at 2.75%, but as of Monday, we had done 171 stop searches for offensive weapons, and 4.7% were positive. So that is a figure that in terms of positive percentage rates, has increased. I guess ideally you'd want to have a zero return because nobody was carrying them. That's maybe been a bit aspirational, but it's something that we can work towards. Moving on to number 4 is making our roads safer. Point 8 was to decrease the number of people killed or seriously injured in Midlothian's roads. And number 9 was to increase the number of people detected for dangerous driving. Both of these are, as you'd say, off target. So last year we had 4 people killed or seriously injured on Midlothian's roads. This year it's 9, 2 on pedal cycles and 2 on motorbikes. The 9 casualties as a result of 7 collisions. 3 people were injured as a result of 1 collision on the A702. But of note, there have been no fatalities as a result of road accidents this year to date compared to 2 last year. It's a pretty harsh target to read when you see that result there, because you think of the number of lives that impacts, and we will continue to work not only at using the local police officers but also the division zone road policing unit and the national units to address dangerous driving. It's something that across the whole division we have seen an increase in this year, the number of people who have been detected for dangerous driving, and that's something that we will continue to focus on because it's not acceptable. So if there's any questions under that. Thank you. Moving on to number 5, which is reducing antisocial behaviour, to increase the detection rate for hate crime and also to reduce the number of incidents of antisocial behaviour reported by members of the public. So the hate crime detection rate has increased, and the number of incidents of antisocial behaviour reported by the public have decreased, which is it's good to be able to sit here and say that, but we will continue to, as I said earlier, work to make sure that we contribute as much as we can to make Midlothian a safe place to live. If I just want to... Yes, we, as police officers, if we come across something on the road that, due to the makeup of the road or the wear and tear, presents a hazard, there are ways that we can submit a notification or a report to the relevant local authority or the national body that's responsible for that road here. But you're right, that road safety is not just about police officers being out giving tickets and stopping people. It's about education and it's about engineering. And it's something that we as an organisation are more than willing to and have worked with partners to make sure that they are addressed. But if we say we're driving back to the office and we see something on the road that's not safe, there's a way that we can report that and pass it on to the relevant body to sort it. Priority 6 was about tackling serious and organised crime. It was to increase the number of detections for drug supply, drugs production and drugs cultivation, and also to increase the amount of cash and assets seized from criminals using the Proceeds of Crime Act. So for one of them we are off target in the sense that there's a reduction in the number of people that have been detected for drug supply, but it's something that we will continue to work on, and I'm quite sure that over the year it will continue to increase. I can say that because I know that collectively across the division there are some areas that are down and some that are up, but as a whole the division is up, and that's something that we will make sure happens here as well. And yes, we have taken here what is a relatively small amount, but it's something that we are, you think I just keep saying this, it's something that we keep, that we are working on, but as a division we are well ahead of where we were this time last year in making sure that people that make money from committing crimes don't get to enjoy the money, and it goes back into the community. So if there's any questions? Okay, finally you'll be glad to hear me say I'm getting near the end, which is number 7 about reducing housebreakings. It's to reduce the number of thefts by housebreaking at domestic properties, and also to increase the detection rate for domestic housebreakings. Within Midlothian there has been a significant reduction. This time, when the report was written this time last year, you had 37, and you were on 19 when the report was written. As of Monday, a year ago there had been 58, and this year there's been 30. So it's been just about halved, which is really good. The detection rate this time last year, the report says 18 to 26. On Monday it was 22 last year, and it's 30 this year. So the number of offences has gone down, and the detection rate has increased. However, there are a number of other areas round about here, out with Midlothian, which are currently being subjected to a marked increase in the number of domestic housebreakings. So we are conscious that, well, it's their turn just now, but it might be our turn next week or next month. So to address that, you'll notice that in his report, Jim makes reference to marker pens and UV marking on property, so that if something is taken, there's a way that the criminals might not know it's marked, but we will. And then there's places we can check. If you go to a pawn shop, or if somebody's resetting stuff, you can find out whether or not it's been stolen. But collectively, within the east and mid area, so East Lothian, Mid Lothian, and also Edinburgh City, on Monday we started Operation Stoneham, which is based in Preston Pens and is looking to address or deal with an organised group that are going round carrying out housebreakings, and in particular, I was hoping the media were going to be here today, because it's amazing the number of people that go off on holiday or go out and don't lock their house, or lock their house and leave the car keys for their generally high value car on a table or within reach of somebody putting something through the mailbox and pulling the keys out, and then the car goes missing. And then occasionally there's a bit of dangerous driving, where the car is then seen travelling round the Lothians and Scottish borders, and sometimes in the Lanarkshire and into Fife and up into Forth Valley, and is then involved in a number of housebreakings. So for Midlothian, it's a good story in that there's been fewer housebreakings and the detection rate is up. But we are, as a division, and working with Edinburgh and Fife and Forth Valley and Lanarkshire, very aware that, for example, there was a team coming through from the west, and they've been travelling kind of northwest England, western Scotland, or southwestern Scotland, through our area and back down into northeast England, going round stealing cars and carrying out housebreakings, particularly what we would call a slip-in one, where someone doesn't lock the door. So you've made it really easy for them, haven't you? You've not even locked the door. So they just open the door, go in, and help themselves, and away they go. So it's a good picture for Midlothian, but we will continue over the next few weeks to do some work, including hopefully some with the media, to make people aware, please lock your door and don't leave the car keys within reach inside the front door, because that's making it too easy for the bad guys. So, thank you.
Does that figure in housebreaking include things like garages and sheds? Because I think fairly regularly in local press we're reading about incidents or at community councils that it's brought up that yet another shed's been broken into and bikes and tools have been stolen.
Yeah, Jim and I had discussed this last week. No, that figure is just looking at domestic houses. It doesn't include sheds and outbuildings and garages. So that is something that we are aware was a bigger issue, but still remains an issue within Midlothian, where your garden shed gets broken into and all the tools go or the bikes go. So that is something that is looked at and will form part of the work by the operation.
Thank you. Does it then include just forced entry? You mentioned people who leave the door open, maybe a window that's left ajar, which perhaps isn't forced entry, but just opportunism. Would those be included in these figures?
If somebody is going through an open window, or yes, it's not just somebody necessarily breaking a door. There are occasions where they've tried the door handle and got in, and that might be classified as a different type of crime. But if someone's crawling through a window or forcing a door, that's a housebreaking. Yeah, we can have a big discussion around class of crimes and how we code them, so on and so forth. And ultimately, at the other end, no matter what it's classed as, there's still a victim. And if we can catch the criminal, or if the victim can help themselves by locking the door and locking the window, then that's ultimately where we want to be.
Thanks. These figures then seem actually quite low. 37 in a whole year in the whole of Midlothian, with how many houses in Midlothian? Tens of thousands, anyway. It seems very low. Maybe the perception of housebreaking is far greater than it actually occurs. Is that true?
These figures here are for the first reporting quarter, so I mean you could probably multiply it by 4, and that would give you roughly where you would be at the end of the year. Yes, it's a small number in terms of houses, but I'm aware, as the Chair was saying, there are sheds and garages that get broken into, and yeah, having had my house broken into when I was a student at university in Aberdeen, it's not something that you like, and it leaves a bit of an unpleasant feeling. So I mean, whether it's 1 or 200, it's still a victim somewhere, so we're going to do what we can to deal with it.
Sorry, I was just going to come in on that. Certainly at the monthly delivery groups we analyse crimes of dishonesty, and I'm aware that over the last few months we have been focusing on crimes of dishonesty, particularly to non-domestic acquisitive crime, and the delivery groups certainly are seeing that as a big issue in Midlothian. The thefts from outbuildings and sheds. We've done a lot of work to try and kind of increase public awareness, encourage people to lock up the property. We've got property marking kits, and the UV gel was mentioned earlier. A lot of that focus has been around sheds and outbuildings, and certainly we are seeing that as a big issue under acquisitive crime, that priority. And one of the most recent things that we saw last month was the theft of pedal cycles. Really does seem to be on the increase in Midlothian. So we're looking at doing a bit further analysis on that, and a possible, see what work we could do to specifically target groups of people who own pedal cycles. So that was just to give you a bit of input on that. Certainly the delivery group are taking action on this, and they are seeing non-domestic acquisitive crime as a big priority.
Okay, I think with that we're happy to note the report. Okay, thank you. That takes us then on to item 9, which is first up, quarter 4 performance report.
Thanks for that, Chair. Good morning, everyone. The first quarter report, I've provided you with both the report and a cover report. I'm going to read from the cover report, and I'll happily drill down into the report if there's any questions that you've got. Both reports I think I've got in front of you today, I think are both encouraging reports, and they're all going in the right direction. If we take the first one, accidental dwelling fires, in this reporting period there was a decrease of 11 when compared with the same period last year. Fire casualties and fatalities, always pleasing to note that there's no fatalities. However, on this occasion there were 16 non-fatal casualties, which has shown an increase of 12 That might be quite alarming to the members, but it was actually specifically down to two incidents which were in flatted property. And this often happens when there's a fire in a dwelling house within a property like that. As soon as the Fire and Rescue Service breach the front door, it invariably involves a common stair and involves other members within that area. And on these two occasions, on the first incident there was 8 casualties suffering from smoke inhalation, and the second one there was 3 casualties suffering from smoke inhalation. Unfortunately, this is what happens, but there was no fatalities in it, albeit there were casualties, but they were all dealt with on the scene by the Scottish Ambulance Service and the Fire and Rescue Service. Road traffic collisions, there was a decrease of 7. Again, very encouraging, and a reduction in fatalities with regards to road traffic collisions, which goes along very similar lines as what colleagues from the police are stating. Other special service, this was an increase, but I wouldn't like members to be alarmed by this, but there was a change when the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service came into being last year. There was a change to our mobilising protocols for domestic flooding and incidents involving lifts, and we've seen an increase in these types of incidents right across the former Lothian and Borders Fire and Rescue Service area. So that's the reason for this, and you'll see in the next report that's coming for Q1, it's a similar trend, and it's going to take a wee while for that to bottom itself out. My previous role was the head of operations for Lothian and Borders Fire and Rescue Service, and we stopped going to lift rescues and we stopped going to domestic flooding for certain reasons, because we were just being used as a plumber, and that's not particularly, that wasn't the best use of resources. But there was a change of policy with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. Other primary fires, there's a decrease of 2. Unwanted fire signals, a decrease of 23, which is always encouraging because it does take up quite a considerable amount of our time, and it's very much a focus of the command team and the officers within Midlothian. And deliberate secondary fires, there's been a decrease of 2 again when compared with the same period last year. So I'm happy to take any questions on those highlights if there's anything.
I was interested in the lift situation, which can take quite a bit of time and be quite difficult to deal with if it's higher buildings. But in that context, is maintenance a problem quite often, or is it quite different reasons that you're involved in rescue and lifts?
Often what happens when we're involved in lift rescues is someone may be in distress. So the factor or the owner will call the Fire and Rescue Service as a first call, and we'll go along to that. But if the individuals are not in distress, it's generally not an issue for the Fire and Rescue Service. However, we will take action immediately if they are. But what's happening in the past, going back to when I started 25 years ago, lifts were all kind of roughly along the same lines. But there's been such an advancement in lifts over the past few years that we cannot possibly be up to speed with the operational use of the lifts, and hence why we always default to asking for a lift engineer, because they are extremely complicated bits of machinery, and that could pose an issue for the safety of the individuals within it, but also the Fire and Rescue Service staff. So we do tend to ask for if an engineer has been called, but if we are asked to attend, we will always attend. But that has now become, when there is no one at risk, that becomes a chargeable special service, and invariably premises are now defaulting to going to the lift engineer, because they would have a charge for the Fire and Rescue Service and an additional charge for. So, but that's the reason behind it.
On the unwanted fire signals, it's not something we've talked about before. Just noticing the sort of particular drop in Midlothian East and West. Has there been a particular piece of work done in these areas? Obviously Midlothian West is all a straighten in the retail park there. I'm just wondering if there's any particular work that's been done in these 2 wards, and a bit more specifically.
Convener, I couldn't focus. I'm not sure on those exact areas. However, what I am sure of is there's a new policy that's in draft at the moment. It's due to go live in December, and the team within the Midlothian Prevention and Protection team have developed a draft policy that's in line with that and moving in that direction. And that's been a focus of the P&P team, to focus in on where the most prolific offenders are. It's an automatic alarm. It's not just the same type of offenders that the colleagues the police are dealing with, but it does take up quite a considerable amount of our resources, and we do focus. We run a monthly report and we identify those premises that are the worst offenders, and that's where we focus our attention. And that's been an ongoing initiative with the P&P department within the Midlothian.
I'd be quite keen maybe to get a bit more on that if possible. I mean, after the meeting's fine, but because it's encouraging that it's heading in the right direction. But I know it's certainly something that we've talked about at this board a few times now, because it's an absolute waste of the service time to be having to deal with unwanted signals.
What I can do for the next report, the next performance report for Q2, is I'll ensure that, or I'll provide an additional report that identifies those premises and the actions that's been taken.
Thank you, Chair. We were told, I think, at a previous meeting that one significant cause of domestic fires is charging appliances, mobile phones, things like that, and that's becoming more significant, rather. In this day and age, everyone's got a mobile phone. Many of us have got iPads. I heard incidents recently, I think it was in the northwest of England, of an e-cigarette battery charger exploding, and there were other incidents of a similar nature in the area. Now, I can only charge my mobile phone when I'm not using it, which means when I'm asleep, really. And I think it's the same for just about everybody, that it's just not realistic to charge it during the day when you're going to be using these things. What sort of advice do you give? Is it the case that it's people using the wrong chargers for the particular batteries, and that if you use the right one that came with the model, that you're generally speaking safe? Or that other precautions people can take, perhaps put them in fireproof boxes when they charge up? I don't know.
Councillor, you're absolutely right. Everyone does the exact same thing. I charge my own at night next to my bed, so I do follow the same. But I do tend to buy the actual original charging machines, and invariably there has been some work done by trading standards up and down the UK where there has been chargers that have came from abroad, from the Far East, that are not to the standard CE marked as what we would expect within the United Kingdom. But invariably there's always, there are faults as well that can happen. But these are covered within our home fire safety visits. The fire crews do identify things like this, and where's the best place to charge your phone, when's the best place to charge your phone, not to use your phone while it's been charging. I only realised this a few months ago. The Apple phones, they've only got a very small cable, and the reason why that cable is so small is to stop you from using it while it's being charged. That's the reason behind it. But you can buy a 3-metre one off the internet, off Amazon, and that allows you to stand and talk to it. But Apple suggests that you do not use anything but the 1-metre charging cable, and it's to stop you from using the phone whilst it's being charged, because there's a potential risk there. So we do cover this in our home fire safety visits, but yes, you're right, some of the it's not using the correct cable can be a contributory factor. And there will be other factors, and it will be down to people misusing them as well, overloading the plugs with 3 or 4 different chargers. These can all impact and cause these accidental dwelling fires. Has that answered your question?
Okay, happy to note the Q4 report. Yes, thank you. So if we take it on to the Q1 2014-15.
Once again, I feel this is another encouraging report, and again, it's covered by the cover report. Accidental dwelling fires, unfortunately, there was an increase of 3 incidents in this period. There has been, again, but action that we've taken in this, and normally it's the same kind of action we always take. Community safety engagement activity in the form of home fire safety visits continue to be focused on the highest risk areas. Local fire stations supported by the Community Action Team directly target the areas where we've seen an increase in the fires. And my colleague to the left here, Keith, is a local station commander for Dalkeith, and he and his team are focusing heavily on ensuring the areas have been identified as there been an increase, that home fire safety visits are the focus for these areas in the next coming months, to try and make sure that we reduce these. In addition, another new policy that's came out from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service is a post-domestic incident response. Where we've attended a fire in a property, whether it's in a flatty property or in the street, we will direct the crews at that time, depending on the time of day, will directly target the houses and other accommodation directly in that street or above and below if it's a flat, to focus the minds of the individuals and also give some reassurance to the occupants who have maybe been affected by the domestic fire. And if required, we'll carry out home fire safety visits at that time, or indeed offer to come back at another time when it's suitable for the occupants. And if required, we will fit smoke detection at that point, just to ensure the occupants' safety. Moving on, again, no fatalities in this reporting period, and there was a decrease of 5 non-fatal casualties. Road traffic collisions. We attended 8 road traffic collisions in this period, and again a decrease of 3. And as I said earlier on, other special services, 26, and again this is an increase of 13 incidents, but again it's the instance of lift rescues and flooding that's causing this, and the changing to our mobilising protocols. Other primary fires, there was an increase of 11 in this period. 33 in total, and as I say, there's 11. That was an increase in 11, and this was attributed to. It was actually brought up in college regarding the shed incidents for break-ins. Sometimes the break-ins are happening, and then to hide it, there's then fires. So it seems to be there's a correlation between incidents that's happening with the police are often then becoming incidents for the Fire and Rescue Service. And as you can see in the main report, this has been raised up through the Task and Coordinating Group to examine any crime prevention measures that may lead to a reduction in these incidents. So it's going to be a joint initiative with the police and the Safer Communities team to try and reduce these. Unwanted fire signals, again, a slight reduction, just at 7, but it's always a reduction. I'm happy to take any reduction when it comes to unwanted fire signals. And finally, deliberate secondary fires, again, down by 27, so there's quite a common theme. Across both reports, there's been quite considerable decreases across the main key areas that have been identified in the local plan. I do think they're quite encouraging, so I'm happy to take any questions on quarter 1 as well.
I think quarter 1 was at the period when there was the issues in Woodburn where there was very specific incidents that were, yeah.
Yeah, I note there was an instance of violence to the crew. Were the people apprehended, or was the person apprehended?
Councillor, it was verbal abuse in this instance. They wouldn't have been. No, they wouldn't have been. We will note it, and if required, and I've got to say, our police colleagues are right on our back, and they're giving us support at every instance where there's an instance of violence to crews. They're very, very supportive and apprehend when required. I've got to say, I'm the commander of Edinburgh as well. I find I get more violence to crews in Edinburgh, and it's often. Unfortunately, there's some physical, and in those instances, they have been apprehended and taken to court. So, but again, that's through the support of our colleagues in the police.
I think we're happy to note the report. Thank you. That then takes us on to item 11, which is the strategic assessment 2015-16. Rosie?
Yeah, this report just presents the strategic assessment for 2015-16. What this actually is a collation of data from the year, from the 1st of April 2013 to the 31st of March 2014. It's a key document for the partnership. We produce it every year. It helps us set our priorities. In terms of the next steps with regard to this document, well, in pulling together the document, it's been collated in partnership across the Community Safety Partnership. So Laura, the partnership analyst, wrote the document, but it's been done in consultation with partners. Next steps now are to take this to the Community Planning Partnership Day on the 9th or 10th of October, the date's somewhere in here, in October. At that meeting, we will use the data in this report to then decide on which priorities we want to take forward into next year. At present, there is a citizens panel questionnaire underway and a public consultation on the priorities. So what we've done is we've taken just a one-page summary of this strategic assessment and inserted that into the panel questionnaire. So there's a very short snapshot of this in that. So really what I'm asking for here is, in my report I was stating that we were going to EQIA this strategic assessment, but I've since spoken to our Equalities Department, and since this is just a summary of the research that we've done and it doesn't actually include any recommendations, we don't need to EQIA it. So what I'm going to ask here is if we can just approve this for publication, and then we can take that forward to the event in October.
Yeah, I think also there's a lot of detail in here, but there's been an extensive amount of work done to come up with the priorities we have in here, and now the public consultation part of this is ongoing, and the responses of that should be available by the time we get to the 9th of October planning day, which will help form this then goes into a strand to form the wider community planning partnership strategic priorities for the next year as well. So are members happy to agree with the report, or any specific questions on it? Okay. That then takes us on to future models for community justice. Margaret.
This is a response to the consultation on the future model of community justice. The consultation actually closed and the response had to be sent back at the beginning of July, Chair, so it wasn't possible to bring the consultation to this particular board before it was completed, but it did go through council and various other channels. As people are probably aware, the community justice authorities, the CJAs, of which there are 8 in Scotland, are being abolished, and community justice is going to be under the management and governance of community planning partnerships. This will probably come about in 2016-17. This was basically looking at some of the detail of this new structure, and I won't go through all of it, it's very long, but I suppose it's really just to kind of make people aware that we are moving towards this new system. It does mean that Midlothian will have to create a reducing reoffending partnership. I think we maybe need to decide, would that be an extension of this particular board or not. Statutory and non-statutory agencies who are not currently directly involved with criminal justice, such as health, housing, etc., will have to demonstrate how they've reduced reoffending, and I think that's going to be one of the new things for some agencies that don't particularly see themselves as having that remit at the moment. And you know, the actual model of the reducing reoffending partnership in this area, as I say, hasn't been worked out. One of the options which we've discussed briefly is that it is possible within the government's proposals that we could join up with other local authorities, so potentially we could join up with, for instance, East Lothian, which from the point of view of Midlothian being a very small authority might make sense. However, there's obviously, as I point out in this, there's risks related to that as well as opportunities, because it would mean that there would be more than one community planning partnership would need to be involved in agreeing all the decisions that were made. So a lot of these decisions are still to be taken. I think when we'd spoken before, we're hoping to maybe start to look at some kind of shadow arrangement, maybe starting around March, April next year, kind of leading up to the actual changes happening, hopefully the following year. But if anybody wants to get back and ask me any questions about this, because it's a long document, it's a long consultation with a lot of information in it, then please just get in touch with me to discuss or suggest anything. Thank you.
I certainly think shadow arrangements as soon as possible would be useful, because we've seen the benefit of that, and well, this board itself benefited from a shadow year to develop our own make-up and processes, and I suppose the continuing evolution of community safety and the introduction of community justice, it shows again the evolution that we're going through still. So, yeah. Any questions or comments? I mean, I know elected members have seen this through the council, but have any other colleagues got any questions or comments on the response? Happy to note the response, and obviously we'll continue to look at most appropriate structures and format for ourselves. Okay. It takes us to item 13, which is Police Scotland evaluation of year 1 in Midlothian.
I'm not going to read through the whole report, but I'll just give you a quick summary of this report. This report was prompted by discussion at the last board meeting about the changes in the way Police Scotland are handling domestic abuse calls and the effect that's had on the higher conversion to crime rate, and then the knock-on impact that's had on the criminal justice section in terms of them having piles of reports on their desk to complete. So the idea was that we would have a look at kind of what other changes have happened in the last year as a result of Police Scotland coming into force, and what impact has that had on partners. So the plan is that after we've discussed this report, we will obviously go on to have a workshop to further discuss it. The information in this report has been pulled together using the strategic assessment, which you've just signed off, and also in conjunction with the police and other partners. So key points in the report are, obviously I've highlighted the issue with domestic abuse and the new kind of proactive approach and the changes that have happened there and the result that's had on the increase in court reports. Highlight points about drug and the housebreaking initiative team. There have been some changes there regarding the composition and the way that those teams work. We've obviously had a change in the housebreaking figures, and we've got a positive change with regard to the domestic housebreaking, but we've had a slightly negative change in relation to non-domestic housebreaking. And obviously we've already covered some information on Operation RAC and some of the work that's been done around that. With regard to drug supply in the communities, the statistics from the strategic assessment certainly highlight a decrease in the amount of drug value recovered. There has been a range of proactive work being done by the partnership in regard to drug supply, and certainly I'm aware that the ASBBO group does again take a lot of proactive action regarding targeting any people responsible for that type of crime. Let's move on to the road safety section. People will probably be aware there's been some information in the press about Police Scotland withdrawing from the lead role on road safety education. Still a key enforcement role there, but some of the education side of things are not leading, but they are still happy to participate in events that are taking place. So what I've done here is I've provided a table just to summarise some of the key things that were happening before and kind of how the partnership has bridged that gap and how we're working together to resolve any kind of issues there. Obviously we've already had a brief chat about road safety, and I'm aware that that is discussed every month at the delivery group. We've already mentioned the police structure change with the key move there that seems to be people are most commonly aware of is the change in the community beat officer structure, and there now be one per ward, and certainly that will be a focus of the discussion and the workshop. Stop and search, got the information in there. I'm aware there's been a lot of national press about that. In Midlothian, we have a very targeted approach to stop and search, and certainly our positive stop and search figures do seem to kind of reflect that. Violence and antisocial behaviour. We have seen a gradual reduction in violent crime. There's been a lot of positive changes in the last year with regard to the way that Police Scotland and the partnership handle violent crime and the work that we take around that. We've got the new antisocial behaviour and violent offender group, which we've already mentioned, and there is also, I'm aware, there's a lot of work behind the scenes within Police Scotland, a lot of intelligence-led work that goes on in that area. Licensing, we've got more robust, yes, more robust interaction with the licensing board and the licensing forum. Certainly I'm now clerk of the licensing forum, and I'm aware that we've been doing a lot of joint work there around the over-provision statement and any other proactive work we can do with that forum regarding licensing. There's also to note the work undertaken on the policing plan. I know this board were very involved in the engagement around that and the development of that, and the environmental visual audits to note, which is similar to the estate walkabouts that our housing department have. That's a new thing that's come in since Police Scotland. So really that's the key points that I was going to flag up about this report, and I was just going to ask the board to consider the changes, discuss if appropriate, and certainly asking the board to approve moving on to a workshop to discuss this in further.
Any questions? I don't know, do police have any comments, thoughts on the after year one?
Thanks very much, Chair. I think the board is to be congratulated for undertaking this report. I think it's a very good report. And I'm going to take this back and feed this into the officer structure at the Scottish Police Authority. Obviously, the SPA has been working with the police service in moving forward with an evaluation, not just of year one, but an ongoing evaluation. And I'm very interested in the views that you've expressed here, and I'll feed back into that. This isn't an initiative that I've seen in any of the other local scrutiny bodies that I'm an observer at, and it's something I think that deserves wider awareness. So I'm happy to support this and take it forward in the way that I suggest.
Thanks for that. Those comments. Ian?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, it's quite encouraging. There are a couple of aspects which I'm particularly like to comment on. One is the walkabouts, which I've been involved with the tenants' walkabouts, and unfortunately I missed the policing one earlier this year, and I'm really keen to get involved in that because I think it's really good for personnel to see things on the ground rather than be just reactive. The second thing is the weekly updates from the wards, which I'm grateful to Graham here, who sends me one every week, and it is really useful for ward members to have that information, to be on the ball with what's happening, and to be able to respond when people come to us. So those aspects of the changes, really we're seeing them, and they're very helpful. I just have one question at the top of page 148 in the papers. It has about traffic wardens enforcement temporarily being jointly funded by the Council and Police Scotland. Can you tell me what the current situation is regards funding, how many we've got? I think I heard it was 2 across the whole of Midlothian, where they operate, when they operate, and what the funding structure is likely to be going forward.
I think you've doubled our numbers there, Ian. I don't know. I think there's a number of options being looked at, but obviously to decriminalise is not a quick process. It will take us 18 months, 2 years probably to work through that, if that was even something we wanted to do, because the last time it was looked at, there was a feeling it was probably going to cost us something like 200 to 300,000 a year just to do that, and that wouldn't be covered by any income. So we're looking at a number of options, but it is actively being looked at. Just on the walkabouts, could I just maybe make a plea that when they are being arranged, that I think I agree with Ian, it would be very, very useful if the ward members and as a local councillors are able to make it. But I know certainly when the Lone Head one was arranged, it was the afternoon of a full council meeting. So when you're going to the next community council and taking pelters for not having attended the police walkabout, and it's because you've been in the chamber at a full council, it would be quite useful if some consideration could be given to sort of the other pressures that are on elected members, because I know a number of us would be delighted to be able to attend the walkabouts, but can't if they're at the same time as another committee. I know it can't be perfect because it can't always be accommodated, but things like the main council meetings, if they could be avoided, I think would be useful.
Just to quickly say about the domestic abuse issue, I think one of the issues that might be useful to talk about at the workshop is in relation to obviously the police business increasing in relation to domestic abuse, what the possibility might be for extra capacity for yourselves, because I'm aware of the fact that it can be quite difficult for us now running Caledonian and Midlothian to get information during the 3-week period that we get to write a criminal justice social work report for court, where actually information about previous call-outs to that house is crucial in terms of our risk assessment about the perpetrator of the offence. I know that the DALOs are very, very busy, and their telephone answering boxes tend to be full. It's very difficult to leave a message for them, and the impression is that it's getting a bit more difficult for us to get information, but also that they're obviously very, very busy with all the new work that's happening, and I don't know whether there's any possibility to increase the capacity that exists within the police in terms of DALO capacity, which is the Domestic Abuse Liaison Officer.
There's 2 recommendations in the report, also to consider the report, but also to participate in the planned workshop. I certainly think that's going to be very useful for us to have. So we're happy to agree the recommendations and agree the report. Okay, thank you. That then takes us to item 14, which is Midlothian response to consultation on anti-social behaviour, etc. Scotland Act 2004.
Again, I'm not planning on going through this. I won't go into as much detail as for the last report. This is a proposed amendment to the Act, and specifically there are 3 categories in this: antisocial behaviour, closure orders, and antisocial behaviour fixed penalty notices. So what we've done is the community safety team compiled a draft response which was discussed at the delivery group, who've then provided partner input on that. And I've attached the draft consultation response as an appendix to this paper. So really what I'm asking for here is that the board can approve this for submission to the Scottish Government on behalf of the Community Safety Partnership.
Any questions, comments? Happy to agree that as a response. Okay, thank you. In that case, that then takes us to item 15, community safety update.
Yep, really this was just to keep the board in the loop. We were asked on a 6-monthly basis to provide an update for the community planning working group. So this was just a copy of the latest update that we provided to the working group. It just provides a summary of some of the key things that the partnership's been up to over the last 6 months, and some of the forthcoming kind of engagement activities that we've got planned. So really this is just asking the board to note this report, and just any questions, happy to take them.
Questions, comments? Happy to note the report. With that, I thank you all for your attendance.